Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. It's the usual lineup. I was going to say the OG lineup. I don't like that phrase. It's the usual lineup. It's Henry Hill. It's Michael McCubbin. Henry, how are you on this Wednesday morning?
Who was the lineup before me, technically?
Pat, Chris, me, McCubb, sort of alternating.
Don't like it.
Joe used to be on it as well. It used to just be... Originally, it was just basically Sunday vibes.
Yeah.
But just about European football. Back in the day.
Love it.
Back
in the glory days. Originally, it was actually... The concept was that Chris and Pat would interview European experts on it. So I think Guillaume Balaguer was the first episode.
Yeah,
How much has changed?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now you've got here as well.
Now you've got 3 European experts just plonking out knowledge. So there you go.
Yeah. Love that. McCubbs, are you well?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Yeah, not so bad.
Enjoy the England game last night?
Yeah, it was all right, wasn't it? Yeah, it was all right. I didn't think it was a very good game, but Bellingham was good.
I liked it.
Yeah, Bellingham was really good, wasn't he? Rashford, nice to see him get on the score sheet. But I was going to say, the second present giving this week, I've realised this is weeks ago. I went to Marseille a while back, and I got you two a couple of little Marseille.
This is becoming
things.
a theme of my week, being presented with this.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Just a
I love
couple
a
of little
trinket.
tricks, little trinket,
That's
a little
so
trinket.
nice. I'm going to put that on my Sunderland signed ball.
Nice, yeah.
Create a little shrine in the
Make
corner.
a little friendship between Marseille.
I feel like
and
I need to get
Sunderland.
you guys something now.
You do, Dukes. Actually, you do. Yeah. It's been noticed.
I need a holiday. I've just booked my honeymoon, actually, and to the Philippines. So maybe I will get you some
Nice.
Philippines football stash.
The idea that you're running around your honeymoon trying to get presents from the
Stop, Grace. Stop what you're doing.
priority.
We can't actually go to the beach. We need to go to the souk.
a famous football nation of the Philippines.
Yeah,
Well,
huge.
Neil Etheridge. A Neil Etheridge top. I think he's their keeper.
Etheridge.
He is indeed. He is
Made the
indeed.
Women's World Cup as well, didn't they, Philippines?
I'm not
I
actually
think
the biggest
so.
fan of Neil Etheridge because he nearly broke my nose
Oh, yeah, he
at
did.
Cardiff. So, I think I'll stay clear of him. But anyway, enough of that. That was a great intro, actually. Right, today we are talking specifically about the Bundesliga. Basically, in the last few weeks, I think we've done a lot of roundups, a lot of transfer shows, lots of who's been a big disappointment, who's been a star, etc. Today we're going to focus specifically on the Bundesliga title race and mainly frame it around Bayer Leverkusen, mainly frame it around Xabi Alonso. And Henry, we're going to kick off with the question, can Bayer Leverkusen win the Bundesliga title? Take it away.
Well, McCubbin, what's the lineup in bold?
It says, why the bloody hell not?
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of that. I don't see why not. It's as good a chance as any. I know it's early days, but they are playing absolutely spectacular football. By all accounts, it is, I haven't watched 90 minutes, loads of them, but by all accounts, it is the best flowing football in the Bundesliga. And the numbers do back it up. I mean, the pass accuracy is insane. It's the highest. And actually, if you look at what they're doing, they're quite narrow. They're happy to have the ball in the middle and just knock the ball around and wait for their moment to strike. They've got the most pass sequences per shot of any side in Germany, which basically means they're knocking it around loads and then going. And they're shooting lots. We'll get into some of those numbers a little bit later. I mean, only Bayern are outdoing them for kind of shots at the moment and possession. And that's kind of fair enough. You'd expect that with the squad that Bayern Munich have got, with the football that Thomas Tuchel likes to play anyway. I mean, to be honest, Bayern is the ultimate kind of sticking point to this whole debate, really, isn't it? I mean, I just love the kind of football that Leverkusen are playing. They rarely cross it. They're just getting the best out of certainly the starting 11 in their squad at the moment. And yeah, I mean, they've matched Bayern for goals with 23 scored. That's the most in the division. And conceded just 6. They're defending really well and attacking really well. And every journalist seems to agree they've probably got the best balance in their starting 11 this season. I think Xabi Alonso has to take huge amounts of credit. When he inherited the side, they weren't going to be relegated, let's be honest.
They were still 17th, weren't they?
They were 17th, but there was enough talent in that squad.
Yeah.
I know the Bundesliga is famously volatile. You never know who can get sucked down there. But the transformation is quite remarkable. And we've obviously talked a lot about him as a guy, multi-award-winning player, played under the very best coaches. And that has really just seeped into his managerial style, sort of taking little bits from all the managers and influences that he's had, but also kind of the mentality at the club. I was reading that there used to be this kind of, there's a word for it in German, I can't remember what it was, but basically there's this almost relaxed acceptance at Bayer Leverkusen. The pressure almost wasn't there. It's a quiet city. It's not the biggest city in the world because, Leverkusen, as it were. There wasn't that kind of, never felt like there was enduring pressure to ultimately win something. You know, they're a rich club. They're pretty stable, aren't they? But Xabi Alonso has really kind of changed that. And this is a quote I got from The Athletic from Simon Rolfes, who's the sporting director. And he said, "There's a seriousness and maturity in our football that reflects Xabi as a person. He's a natural competitor and winner. He's instilled a battle-hardened attitude and a fighting spirit in the side." And he said he's not dogmatic. Like, although they play beautiful football, if they need to find a way to win, he's happy. Like, he was desperate for them to score more set pieces the other day, and they now have. They've scored 4 set pieces this season. That's the most in the Bundesliga, and apparently gave them 2 days off. He was like, look, these are the little margins that we need to try and capitalise on. You can't just pass your way through teams all the time. You have to learn to win ugly. And like, apparently last year in the Europa League, the comeback against Monaco, where they eventually got them to penalties away from home and won on penalties, that was a big deal for them. And if you look at this season, that draw against Bayern Munich, coming back in the dying moments to grab a draw and maintain their unbeaten start, 6 wins, 1 draw from 7 is pretty remarkable work. So Xabi Alonso, he's got his imprint all over this side, signed that new deal until 2026. Great positive signs at the club. Apparently he's not bothered about other departments in the club which aren't directly focused with the football itself. Like, he's just focused on that, really. Apparently he's not a kind of huge voice like Jurgen Klopp, which the entire club loves. It's just the football for him. And apparently, we were talking off camera, he's still like the best player on the pitch in training. He's still, they were saying some managers show off, but he doesn't show off. Like, he'll do it to like prove a point, but he's not there going, look at me.
Yeah,
he's just, and he can back it up with his stats and tacticians. He's the first one in, last one to leave training every day. But we have to give credit to sort of the Rolfes, Simon Rolfes, the sporting director, and Fernando Caro, the CEO of the club. They've both been there for a very long time, which I think is important. They have a great relationship with Alonso, and their business this summer has really transformed this side. Like, if you look at their best performing players this season, a lot of them are new additions. They sold Diaby, obviously, for big money, but they've spent that really, really well. And actually, they decided to get a lot more experience to complement the young kind of aspects of that side. Like Granit Xhaka, Jonas Hoffmann are both 31 years old. Alejandro de Grimaldo gives them a threat down the left-hand side, which they were kind of missing. He's 28 years old. And then, obviously, Victor Boniface up front. Like, what a revelation he's been this season. But, I mean, if we just kind of go through the numbers of some of these high performers, Xhaka, who's playing in a much deeper role this season than he was certainly last season for Arsenal, he's back in midfield. He's just been remarkable. 92% pass accuracy at the moment, 93 passes a game on average. He leads Europe for passes into the final third. He's sick for progressive passes, and he plays as many balls into the penalty area as Saka and Salah at the moment. He's really pulling strings for that side. Next to Ezequiel Palacios, who I think is he's sort of a season and a half away from a huge move. I was pitching him as a potential cheaper Moises Caicedo alternative.
Yeah, you were.
But now he's coming through. But he's even more attacking. He's got 2 goals, 3 assists this season. They all, like, every one of their midfielders is happy passing it into the final third. It's not like they just rely on one person. And then the front 3, they're all happy receiving it. Like Wirtz, Boniface, and Hoffmann are all in the top 10 players in the Bundesliga for passes received. So they're all willing to say, look, give it to me, and let me do something. That is so dangerous when there's just not one focal point. When there's just 3 players who are moving around each other, creating opportunities for each other, it's kind of nuts. Like, and Grimaldo, just go back one step. Granado on the left, he's really provided that threat. He's got 2 goals, 3 assists, which is the same as Frimpong this season. He's doing exactly what he was expected to do so far. Huge tackle numbers as well against dribblers. Apparently, and with the back 3 as well, who are really, really impressive. Hincapié, Tapsoba, Kusunu. Yeah, it's Jonathan Tah as well. Like, that's great players all across the back line. Like, they've just quietly built an unbelievable squad. And then, the front 3 are just exceptional. Like, Florian Wirtz, back to his best. Like, since his return from injury, has been remarkable. Only 1 goal and 3 assists, but he's like basically top of every attacking metric in terms of shot creating actions, key passes, whatnot, dribbles, and successful take-ons, 3 balls. Like, he's doing so much for this side, as is Jonas Hoffmann, who's been exactly what they wanted him to be, just a super creative elder figure within the squad who's installed that kind of senior mentality. 4 goals, 3 assists, his highest shots ever as a player so far. He's currently 5th in the Bully for shot creating actions as well. So great from Hoffmann. And then Boniface as well, 7 goals, 2 assists, slightly probably overshadowed by Kane and maybe Serhou Guirassy at the moment, but 6.6 shots per 90. And in one of the games, he only had 1 shot. So and that's the average, 6.6 shots per 90. With
go on.
2.5 on target, huge aerial win rates, huge take-on, like 4th in Europe for take-ons, successful take-ons this season. He's a beast. He's aggressive on the ball, driving forward, and he's just taking a ton of shots, and he's got players around him who are creating space for him and creating opportunities for him. Yeah, like Boniface for 20 million euros. What was it? Like, wow. What were you
I was just going to say, you kind of touched upon it there. Like, I think it's his work, aside from goal scoring, his general centre forward play is just so good. Like, just brings other players into play so much. He's been absolutely remarkable. I don't think there would have been many people who would have predicted just how big an impact he'd had on this side, because especially given like his goal scoring record at Union Saint-Gilloise wasn't even that amazing. Like, it was fine, but it wasn't like it wasn't world class.
He's matched his league output already in objectively a tougher league this season. He did score quite a lot in the Conference League or the Europa League, whatever they're in last season. But like, finally, just as a negative, because the starting 11 have all basically been the only players who have played so far. Like, the rest of the squad are very much substitutes at the moment. I mean, Robert Andrich is the only player to have even started one game, and he has only started one game out of all the substitutes in the team so far. Like, we were just saying, Nathan Teller, 40 minutes so far. Krojek, only 40 minutes so far. Like, I think he's going to have to, I don't know what's happened to Schick at the moment, but I think he's going to have to, he's out. He's going to have to start giving his bench more game time, because I know they've got the Europa League as well, but he can't just rely on their starting 11 for the whole season. And
especially with Hoffman and Xhaka into their 30s.
Absolutely. But the positive is, like, all of the squad are playing well. It's not as if there's one guy who's basically inspiring this transfer. If we think back to like when Leicester won the league, actually no, I don't know if that's a fair example, but it's everyone is playing their part at the moment. And like, obviously the bench are there to come in and do their bit, but I think you can't just be relying them in moments just to come in and hit the ground running.
I guess the hope would be is that because Xabi Alonso has instilled such a strong system there, that someone like Nathan Teller, after 2 months of being in training every day and watching the team play, and someone who himself is a relatively versatile attacker, can play at centre forward or on the left, someone like him, and Klozek as well, who's been there longer, you'd hope that when they do get integrated into the side, that they can kind of just become a cog in that system, right? Rather than having pressure on them to score or assist in their first game or whatever, or make a huge difference. You'd hope maybe they can just slot in and the team can still function at the same level that it is at the moment.
It's quite remarkable how quickly the starting 11 has just taken shape. Bear in mind, a lot of the players mentioned are all new, if that makes sense. Like, the fact that he knew off the bat, like, this is the team he's going to put out, these are the subs. I just think, it's very early days for that process to have happened, and I imagine he'll start giving game time to some of these fringe players. But yeah, and the other thing that is just history working against them, really. Like, we saw with Borussia Dortmund last year how they froze with that opportunity to win the league. Will that happen to Bayer Leverkusen? You can't say yes or no at this point. It's only 7 games in, and Bayern Munich are playing very good football. This is the other big negative as well. Like, Bayern are absolutely flying. I think Leipzig look brilliant this season. You'll get onto that a bit later, but yeah, those are the negatives. Is like maybe history weighing against them, maybe a potential lack of squad depth at the moment, and Bayern Munich just being Bayern Munich. But aside from that, yeah, absolutely, why not? Why not have Bayer Leverkusen winning the league this year? They've got a manager that clearly is wanted elsewhere. He's doing great things. They've got a squad which is wonderfully balanced. They've got a goal scorer, which is hugely important. And he's got sort of a supporting cast that are living up to expectations with experience running through the side. So yeah, I'm all on the Bayer Leverkusen train this season, but it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I think absolutely everyone is. I mean, it's nice to have, Dortmund have challenged. Leipzig have been up there a bit in the last few years. Actually, Leverkusen were up there at Christmas a couple of years ago, and then had that disastrous performance against Bayern and never really recovered. I think Radetzky made an error. I think Jonathan Tah made an error as well. But I think the point that you've illustrated so beautifully is the fact that maybe a bit over the top, but no, it was a very nice, very nice description. But the fact that I think you made so well was, for all these new signings to hit the ground running, I think that's a massive credit to the environment created at the club, the scouting of the club, and Xabi Alonso's sort of tactical instructions, because Victor Boniface didn't have a lot of experience at the top level, really. And to look that comfortable so early, Alejandro Grimaldo had been talked about for years, but he's looked absolutely excellent. And the fact that they've shown a lot of belief going behind in games, facing tougher opposition as well. They've already played Leipzig, they've already played Bayern, got 4 points out of those games. I think it bodes really, really well. But McCubs, the sort of overhanging cloud over this whole discussion is the presence of Bayern Munich. I mean, They are probably still favourites to go on and win the title, but do they deserve to be, and do you see that happening on the basis of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Bayern, isn't it? I think Bayern probably came into this season in some ways as more unsettled than they have in years, given the events of kind of the latter stages of last season. Like, they only won the Bundesliga on goal difference last year. They did so with their lowest points tally since, I think, 2010-11, when they finished third behind Leverkusen, actually, and Klopp's Dortmund. And they were really lucky, actually, in the end to win it. I know that, if you look at the underlying numbers, they were, by and large, the best team in the Bully still, but they lost huge games. They lost to Mainz and Leipzig in the final weeks of the campaign. They were just lucky that Dortmund failed to capitalise and drew so many in that time, especially directly after Bayern losing. And even then, it took an 89th minute winner from Musiala against Köln, famously on the final day, to settle the title. Oliver Kahn sacked as CEO, Hassan Salihamidzic sacked as sporting director. Lots of change behind the scenes. Christoph Freund was then brought in as sporting director from Salzburg. But Bayern continued to be heavily linked with Max Eberl, who was sacked by Leipzig on the day, I think, of that 2-2 draw. Was it 2-3 weeks ago now? Because of apparent failure to commit to the club from Leipzig's perspective. So that is still hanging in the air, whether Max Eberl will end up at Bayern. And just to clarify, Freund was brought in as Salihamidzic's replacement, and Max Eberl is also a sporting director. But the reason why he's also linked is because Salihamidzic also had a place on the board, and I think it's understood that Max Eberl would be taking a place on the board at Bayern, just to get the kind of boring political stuff out the way. But nevertheless, he's also apparently being looked at by Liverpool, Eberl, according to Bild, because Schmake's contract is up at the end of the season. So if Bayern want to act and get him through the door, they'll probably have to do so fairly soon. But essentially, lots of change behind the scenes. Obviously, as well, Nagelsmann, when he entered Bayern, a lot of us were thinking that this was going to be someone who was going to build a new dynasty at the Allianz Arena, the golden boy of German management, who had such a stellar career so far, had played such exciting football with Hoffenheim and Leipzig. It looked set for him, and also had always dreamed of managing Bayern as well. It looked like he could have been there for 6-7 years.
But then he got that skateboard out.
And then he got the skateboard out, and it all went, didn't it?
Rolled away from him.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of things. I think Bayern would not have expected to be in the position they are now, 18 months ago. But then again, Thomas Tuchel, still one of the best managers in Europe, and I think they did still enter this season as heavy favourites, especially given that Dortmund failed, at the last hurdle last year and lost their best player in Jude Bellingham, and didn't. I don't think that Dortmund's transfer business this summer was, as good as it's been in seasons past. And Bayern, they signed Kane, huge statement, probably the biggest statement signing in Europe this summer, and Kim Min-jae, but arguably the biggest statement defensive signing across Europe. So good at Napoli last year, undoubtedly one of the best centre-backs in the world, despite having only 1 year's top 5 league experience under his belt. Also got Rafa Guerreiro in, Konrad Laimer in, really good depth options. The fact they got Alphonso Davies and Rafael Guerreiro as their left back options is outrageous. And in the process, they weakened rivals in Leipzig and Dortmund. But then you look at Leipzig as well, although I think their business, the business that Max Eberl did this summer was excellent. They still are transitioning out of the era of kind of Szoboszlai and Kunku and Gvardiol. So, I think all the signs were pointing towards a Bayern triumph this year. Even Leverkusen, like Henry said, they sold, their most valuable asset in Moussa Diaby. I guess Florian Wirtz maybe is as valuable, if not more, but certainly in terms of like goal and assist output, Moussa Diaby, their most important player last year. I think most people would have been pretty confident about Bayern, still relatively confident about Bayern, but there are reasons to believe that they're going to be in for a little bit of a slog this season. I mean, I guess let's go with the positives first. Kane has been amazing. He's made them more incisive up front. The team currently, I know it's a small sample size, only 7 or 8 games, but they're scoring 3.2 goals per game this year, Bayern. That's up from 2.7 last year. Kane is averaging the highest expected goals and assists per 90 rate in all of Europe's top 5 leagues. Leroy Sané is also on fire in his best form in a Bayern shirt. 6 goals and 7 appearances in the league. Also playing off the right, which in seasons past has been a bit of a problem for him. Looks amazing in this system under Tuchel, and especially his relationship with Kane is great. Liverpool have now been linked with him as a replacement for Mo Salah. Just like paper talk this week, but talk of a club record bid for him. And when you see him, and like maybe it is just the fact that he's playing really, really well off the right and scoring loads of goals, but he does look amazing. He does look really, really amazing coming in off the right. And so, I think that's a really, if there is anything to those rumours, then I think it's a real testament to his performance this season. And then, unlike Leverkusen, who haven't been utilising the bench, someone like Mathis Tel has just been the absolute super sub. He scored 5 goals in 159 minutes across all competitions. He's yet to even start a game, and he scored like winners in really important games. He scored, a late winner against Mönchengladbach early, in the early weeks, then scored the winners against Man United and Copenhagen in the Champions League. So essentially got them 4 points in that Champions League group, which is really quite a tight group. And they also rank top of the league for XG and XG against. So, again, like Bayern, they are clearly the strongest team in terms of their overall squad. Arguably have the best manager in the league as well. I think they actually, unquestionably, actually, they do have the best manager in the league, especially at least the most prestigious manager in the league. But, and it's interesting because all the 3 main title rivals have all played each other already, as Henry was alluding to. They're yet to beat a major rival. They lost 3-0 to Leipzig in the Super Cup. They drew against them and Leverkusen in the league.
Desmond.
Double Desmond. I don't think Henry called either of those as well, which is the biggest shame of this whole thing. And especially against Leipzig, they were really, really poor in the first half. They had to come down from 2-0 down. They probably should have been 3-0 down from that first half display. Tuchel himself said that they weren't on the pitch at all in that first half, and I think he even blamed himself for his initial game plan against Leipzig. But I think it goes to show that in the Bundesliga, Tuchel's tactics don't always work. Tuchel is someone who craves control. He took Borussia Dortmund from a side under Klopp who were incredibly transitional and high pressing to a kind of Pep Guardiola style possession-based team. We saw how obsessed he was with possession at Chelsea as well, and he has a much stronger side at Bayern. But in big games against big rivals, I don't think you could afford to just want to dominate the ball. Like, you do have to be very incisive in those moments and play with speed, especially against the likes of Leipzig and Leverkusen. In that game, for example, Harry Kane only managed 1 shot, and it was a penalty that he scored. So, they are far from perfect. And even, in the Champions League, it took Mathis Tel coming off the bench and scoring, really good goals to beat Man United and Copenhagen. And, they conceded 3 goals at home to a really poor Man United side. And, yes, like this Man United team, I think probably do play better against more expansive teams. Generally speaking, I think that's generally been a rule. But nevertheless, gave away some poor goals against them. Like, the defence has not looked as good as we probably hoped it would have, given the signing of Kim. Matthijs de Ligt has barely got a game. It's been Kim and Upamecano who have been the preferred back two. That Leipzig result as well saw the club get Jerome Boateng back in training. With a view to potentially signing him, and then
huge protest against
huge protest from the fans because of the, he's been in court for domestic abuse allegations. So big protests, and then that saw the club then kind of backtrack and not sign him. And I think they are still adamant that they won't sign him, but he's still training with the under-23s. It's not. Bayern is not. It's far from the most settled place at the moment. I was reading a report by Rafa Honigstein the other day, and he was suggesting that Tuchel's tactics may be too complex for this Bayern team, which I find hard to believe. But apparently, that was something that they complained about under Nagelsmann as well.
Yeah.
But
along with his style and skateboard, like what?
Yeah,
come on, get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always
there's always something with the Bayern manager,
there's always something with the Bayern. Like when Ancelotti was there,
he was too relaxed.
Yeah, he was too relaxed. So
Pep was too intense.
Yeah, you can't
Can't win with them.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it.
Who was the older guy that won the treble?
Jupp Heynckes.
Jupp Heynckes, that's who they want. Just like school.
Get him back in. 80-year-old Jupp Heynckes. Yeah, get him back in. I think it's far from a foregone conclusion that Bayern are going to win this title. I think, first of all, Leverkusen have gone off with a bang. I think, Leipzig have shown, especially in the last 2 seasons, that they really come to life in the second half of the campaign. I know there's been a bit of a change there, but, second half of last season, they were the best team in the league. Second half of the season before, they were the best team in the league. So if Leipzig can avoid like a month, a crisis month, and still be, within 3 or 4 points of Leverkusen and Bayern, I would back them to go really, really strong after Christmas. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I think Bayern could, they have the forward line alone, I think, is enough for them to get over the line. But if they can't sort out the defensive, deficiencies that have carried on into this season, then I think they're very much, there for the taking.
Interesting. I think they'll also have a big January, so the gap before January needs to be quite large, I think. And what would help that is a few injuries. I'm not obviously wishing injury on any of the players, but at central midfield, they've only got 3 central midfielders. Konrad Laimer's already had to play as a right back at times this season. And they've only got 3 centre backs as well. So a few injuries in November, December, as the games start to heat up before the winter break in the Bundesliga, maybe Leverkusen can get an even bigger gap. But unless that happens, I think it's difficult for Leverkusen personally, because they are performing probably at their optimum right now, and they're only 2 points ahead. But we need to talk about the side that's in between Leverkusen and Bayern Munich at the moment, and that's Stuttgart. We will quickly run through the other sort of contenders in this title race. We've talked about them quite a lot in recent weeks, but they got promoted in 2019-20, then finished 9th, but back-to-back 16th place finishes, the relegation playoff in both those years, absolutely smashed Hamburg in May. I think they won 6-1. But then they had a summer of real difficulty in terms of their transfer business, losing Endo, losing Mavropanos, losing Borna Sosa. And it looked like it was going to be difficult for them this year, having had such a difficult league campaign last year. Having said that, they did pretty well in the DFB Pokal last year, which maybe hinted that they slightly underperformed in the league. They reached the semi-finals. They lost 3-2 to Frankfurt, who then lost to Leipzig. But so far, so good. Under Sebastian Hoeneß, it's his first full season in charge. 6 wins from 7 games. Their only defeat came against Leipzig in match week 2, where they lost 5-1, which quite frankly can happen against Leipzig. 22 goals scored, which is only 1 fewer than Leverkusen and Bayern, and 8 goals against is only bettered by Leverkusen, Bayern and Leipzig, who have only conceded 6. They're actually rated as the second best side in Germany by expected points, behind Bayern Munich. But it's really going to come down, well, it's not going to come down to this, but we'll really see what they're up to in the next few weeks. They play Union Berlin, Hoffenheim, Dortmund and Eintracht Frankfurt in 4 of the next 5 league games.
Just quickly, Girassi, his goals aren't just like tap-ins.
No.
They're unbelievable. Like, he's finding top corners, he's flicking it over players and like heading it in. I watched his 13 goals because the Bundesliga kindly put it on YouTube. They're all amazing. I was like, this guy's... I always thought he was quite good, I always thought he was fine. We've talked about him for a while. But yeah, it's interesting what you say about expected points. The fact that Bayern are top, then Stuttgart are actually meant to be second.
Absolutely. And, Girassi had a bit of a useful impact at Rennes, but was never really a regular there. Was on loan at Stuttgart last year, did okay. But yeah, absolutely playing through his skin at the moment. It's been absolutely remarkable to see. Moving on to Dortmund, they're currently level on points with Bayern Munich in 4th, but they're 2 points behind Leverkusen. They actually have recovered quite well because they had quite a difficult start. They actually only won one of their opening 3 games. They drew 2 of those, but they remain unbeaten domestically. They've actually been really disappointing in the Champions League. But in terms of their performances in the league, I don't think they've been too bad. They've beaten Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Hoffenheim and Union Berlin in consecutive weeks, which is a pretty tough run. But if you look at their underlying numbers or their, up-front table numbers, they don't look like they're really on pace. They've scored 7 fewer goals than Leverkusen and Bayern, and they've conceded 2 more than them too. Rated as the 4th best side in Germany by expected points. That's kind of where I expect them to finish. Maybe 4th, maybe even 5th. Their second best performer this season in terms of XG per 90 is actually Mats Hummels.
Love it.
Which is pretty crazy. And he's played a lot of minutes as well. So he's obviously causing a lot of threat from set pieces. Brandt is having an amazing season. Only Müller, Wirtz and Stuttgart's Chris Furyk can top his 0.75 expected goals and assists per 90. But the issue is Sebastian Haller probably hasn't been as good as last year. He's yet to score in the league. He's lost his place to Füllkrug, but now it's Marlon and Royce who are their top scorers on 3. I don't think you get into tighter contention without someone scoring 15 plus goals in the league, and it doesn't look like someone's going to do that this year. Leipzig, we've already talked about, they're coming off back-to-back DFB Pokals. They reached the Europa League semi-finals in 21-22 last year as well. They finished 3rd, but they had 8 more points than the previous year. We've already talked about the players they lost, but I think Openda started really well. Lukeba, Sesko, Baumgartner. Xavi Simons has obviously been superb. Fabio Carvalho, I'd be slightly worried if I was him, not getting a lot of minutes whatsoever on that loan from Liverpool. Having said that, we saw Emil Smith-Rowe, who's younger than Carvalho when he went to Leipzig a few years ago, just going to a new environment and training amongst these top players. Maybe that will improve him. And it didn't look like he was going to play regularly at Liverpool either, but maybe that was a slightly wrong loan choice in Leipzig. But they've been really, really good. To be honest, up until the last few weeks, they lost against Leverkusen in their opening game, but then they got 4 straight wins, that 2-2 draw against Bayern, and we were like, now it's time to kick on, draw against Bochum, 0-0. And they missed 2 penalties in that game. That did feel like a huge aberration, really. They've been pretty good in the Champions League. They beat Young Boys 3-1, and they were drawing 1-1 with Man City up until the 84th minute, and they then went and scored 2 late goals. I think Julian Alvarez scored that amazing sort of curling finish in that. But as usual with Leipzig, it feels like a massive team effort. They've had 9 different goal scorers. They've had 8 different players provide an assist as well. And they have a good opportunity to close the gap in the next few weeks because unlike Stuttgart, they've got a really favourable run of fixtures. So they've got Darmstadt, who've actually been really good so far. They've been 11th. They're 11th at the moment. Then they've got Köln, who are bottom, Mainz, who are 17th, Freiburg, who are 9th, and Heidenheim, who are 10th in their next 5 matches. Wow. So get 15 points out of that. And, you're starting to look like you might be in tighter contention. Hoffenheim, they're 1 point above Leipzig in 5th. We don't really need to talk about Hoffenheim too deeply, I don't think. But Pellegrino Matarazzo, who's ex-Stuttgart, is doing an excellent job there. They've already beaten Wolfsburg and Union Berlin this season. And after a few mediocre seasons in the in light of the departure of Nagelsmann, it's nice to see them back at the top of the table. Keep an eye out for Maximilian Bayer, who was playing with Hannover in the Bundesliga 2 last season, but he's got off to a flyer. He's got 5 goals in 7 games so far. Kramaric, as usual, is their key player. So that's the kind of look around the other teams. But I do personally still think it's coming down to Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen. But the question I wanted to ask you guys, just to wrap up this section, is... Henry, is this title challenge a sort of one-off? What do you think about that? I mean,
what, for Bayern? For Bayer
Leverkusen. Do you think that's slightly tied into whether Xabi Alonso stays?
Yeah, I do. I think when the manager has such a big impact on a club and changes the mentality and whatever, we've seen that with Napoli, haven't we? This season already, Spalletti, the struggles of Garcia. I mean, what I will say is they've got smart guys in Caro and Rolfs who've both been there since 2018. They've been there for a long time. Like, they both know what they're doing. So they're not... The noise around Xabi Alonso leaving is there. Like, it's not going to be... although, obviously, fingers crossed for them that he stays. My understanding is that if Real Madrid, potentially even Liverpool or Bayern Munich, if any of those clubs come in for him, they're not going to stand in his way. So they will... If it looks like Ancelotti is on his way out of Real Madrid, which it seems to change every week.
He's still sort of publicly saying, I'm really happy here, etc.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, even like the Brazil boss is basically saying, well, I'm training this team to still be here for as long as possible.
They did lose to Uruguay last night, I saw.
Did they? Yeah, I saw Neymar chopped down.
Mm.
But yeah, if Xabi Alonso goes, then it's difficult. But if you look on Transfermarkt, their squad is valued at like 550 million euros. Like it's actually by Leverkusen. Their squad is huge. There's so much talent there, and they don't need to sell players every single summer. They're in a really good financial situation.
Helps when you're owned by a pharmaceutical company.
It certainly does help. But I mean, they've always been pretty shrewd with their business. They've always sort of sold players at the right time. Like Wirtz alone will net them 80, 90 million euros whenever maybe even more when they decide to move them on. So yeah, if they can get a good manager in to follow Alonso, and let's bear in mind, like Alonso hadn't managed at the top level when they took a chance on him. He'd done very well with his Real Sociedad B side, but at the same time, there was an element of risk to it, wasn't there? So you never know who they could find. You never know who they could hone in on for the next job. I'd like to think that if they can get to the top and get that winning feeling in the squad, then they've got something to pine towards. Certainly the senior players, Hoffman and Xhaka, aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So in that regard, I do think that they could probably mount another challenge. But if they do well this season, Kosunu 22, Tapsoba 24, Palacios 25. There's going to be a lot of teams coming in for these young guys who want them because they've been elevated to a new level on current viewing anyway.
I think also there's not a guarantee that Xabi Alonso does leave next summer.
That's true.
I think even if Real Madrid come in for him, like I don't think it's 100% that he takes that job, or even Liverpool or Bayern. Like,
he'd want a bit more time developing.
Potentially, I mean, he's done it already in his career. You know, Mönchengladbach came in for him in 2022 was it, or
2021?
It might have even been 2021. Yeah, like God, the last few years, all melding into one for me. But like he decided to stay managing Sociedad's B team because he felt he needed to do more work there, and he was doing an incredible job there. And I'm sure if he'd gone to Mönchengladbach, he would have done an absolutely fine job, but I don't think he would have been able to have the kind of impact that he's had at Leverkusen, that's for sure. Like, he's a clever guy, and I think he knows that he is good enough that the job, those kind of job offers won't suddenly go away. Like Real Madrid have been very, Ancelotti's second spell has been pretty... pretty good. It's worked out very well, and it's felt like kind of Perez has, given him a lot of trust. But generally speaking, Real Madrid managers don't tend to last that long. If an offer comes in next year and he doesn't turn it down, I imagine another offer will come in the year after that or the year after that. Like Xabi Alonso not need to rush this. I think 2 full seasons at Leverkusen would be a really solid thing for him. I know he was there for a lot of last season, but I think two proper seasons, two title challenges with Leverkusen, and good run in Europe with them as well, potentially even European silverware. That's a really kind of solid thing to have on his kind of coaching CV and in terms of kind of an early career achievement. So I don't think there is a guarantee that he leaves.
Fair enough. Yeah, I always remember saying this with Frank Lampard when he took the Chelsea job in a transfer ban, and it felt like that job would be on the table for him like any point in the next 15 years if he was doing well in management. And it maybe, Frank Lampard actually first time around with Chelsea did a pretty good job, right, to be fair. But Xabi Alonso, you get the feeling that Real Madrid will be looking at him as a former player who was, such an icon of that club in many ways. He could get that job at any point in the next 10 years. It's all about timing. And to be fair, there is a lot of an attraction with Real Madrid right now in terms of the young players they've got. Bellingham, Vinicius Jr. I don't need to reel them all off. You all know them. But yeah, maybe he would think, a bit longer at Leverkusen's, not the worst option. And in terms of whether they can mount another title challenge, recently Bayern Munich and, their wins haven't been that dominant. So they only won the goal difference. They only won last year's title, on goal difference, as I say. The year before it was 8 points. The year before that, 13 points. Does that suggest that it's getting tighter and tighter, or were they just in a bit of a dip? We probably need a bit longer to see, but they've been far from perfect this year, I think, at least in a defensive sense. So maybe Bayer Leverkusen could go again with another manager, but this does feel like the perfect opportunity in a way, with Bayern's squad a little bit short in different places, bit of turmoil off the pitch to mount a challenge. But guys, what do you think, more importantly? Will Xabi Alonso go to Real Madrid? And can Bayer Leverkusen keep this momentum up throughout this season? Let us know in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match predictions. Right, there was no big match predictions last week because of international break. So going into this week, the scores are as follows. McCubbs is on 14, I'm on 12, Henry's on 7. Let's get into it. Henry, we're kicking off with Wolfsburg versus Bayer Leverkusen. We probably don't need to talk about in any great detail, but this is Saturday, 2:30 p.m. 7th versus 1st, 7 points between them. Let's talk Wolfsburg, though.
Yeah, absolutely. One more German team, why not? Chuck them in. And in 7th place too, so, nicely in order. It's sort of bit of nothing season so far. I mean, it's fine. They've won 4, lost 3. Niko Kovac's side. Actually, big turnover in the squad this year. This, £70 million they made from Mecha and Mickey van der Ven, who we're seeing what a quality player he is so far. Lovro Meyer, they got him for 25 million from Rennes, 12 million on Joachim Meiler, which actually I think is a really good deal for Joachim Meiler. So those are kind of like the headline signings of the players they've bought in. But yeah, it's just been... They've been very solid at home, which could help them in this game. They're yet to lose at home so far, but they've lost to every team. Every match they've lost is a team ahead of them in the table currently. Right. So it kind of just shows to me they do have like 11 to them. There's nothing really outstanding in their numbers whatsoever. I mean, 10 sides have outscored Wolfsburg this season. They take the 14th fewest shots and only average about 47% possession. And if you look at the squad, like, whereas Bayer Leverkusen, along with Bayer Leverkusen, they play the most narrow football. Like, you're not going to see much of the wing backs these games. It's very narrow football. But the difference is they don't have the creativity to unlock teams in the way that Bayer certainly do. And if you look at the fullback options of Riddle Baku and Joachim Meiler, you'd expect that to be the attacking threat flying forwards. They've got like 1 goal between them so far and 0 assists so far. Just 13 crosses, which is the second fewest in
between
the Bundesliga.
them.
Yeah.
That's mad.
And if you look at their heat maps compared to last season, they're actually playing in their own half a lot more. And really, when you look at the fact that Lovro Meyer is playing in the attacking midfield option, he's not really a winger. And these guys are meant to be the guys bombing forward to sort of make the impact. And they're just not doing that so far. So, I mean, look, it's a work in progress, this Wolfsburg side. It's
going to be down to Jonas Wind.
Jonas Wind is a brilliant player. I was very excited about him when they bought him from Copenhagen. He basically helped keep them up when they sold Wout Weghorst, or I don't know if they sold him, but whenever
when he was loaned to Burnley, when he went to Burnley.
That's exactly right. When he went to Burnley, they invested that money in Jonas Wind, and he came on and he scored loads of goals. And when he was injured last season, they suffered. He's back this year. And he scored 7 goals so far. He scored most of their goals this season. Jonas Wind is a great little player, and I think we'll see him in the Premier League at some point. Ooh. But yes, the only, just trying to, whether or not they can win this game. Bayer Leverkusen, they've only got Arthur injured at right back, clean bit of health. Bayer's 16 of their squad were in international duty, whereas 9 for Wolfsburg.
This is a bit of fatigue.
Yeah, a little bit of fatigue maybe. I'm backing Bayer Leverkusen to win this one, just because Wolfsburg have struggled against the bigger sides.
I mean, after the first 35 minutes of this show, we almost have to.
Yeah. I'm gonna go for a 2-0. I know it's really boring, but that just seems to be. That's what it feels like for me. Yeah. So yeah, Wolfsburg, fine, just floating this season.
The Cubs
might go 4-0.
Wow.
Yeah, 4-0.
That'd be fun. Yeah. Okay. I think you are going 5-0. No, I'll go 3-1. I'll go 3-1 to Leverkusen. Right, let's move on to another big game. Milan versus Juventus, Sunday, 7:45 p.m. First versus third. There are 4 points between them. It's been a crazy week in Italian football, McCubs, with all the betting scandals going on.
Yes.
Lazio leaving banned for 7 months.
Not Italy and a scandal.
I know. It feels like it's been a crazy start to Serie A, full stop, really, with the Osimhen TikToks and De Laurentiis having a go at Rudy Garcia and various craziness. But what do you think is going to happen in this game?
This game, I don't know how entertaining this game's going to be, really. I think Milan go into it as clear favourites. They are top of the league. I know they got absolutely battered 5-1 by Inter, but they've won every other game. Having said that, it's been quite an easy run. They've beaten Lazio and Roma, but both of those sides were pretty, in a pretty bad place when they played them. Both are still, very much recovering. I think Roma are 10th, Lazio are still 13th or 14th. And they've also been outscored by 4 clubs in the division. They've also conceded more than 4 other clubs. So this Milan side are far from perfect, even if they are, more they're less one-dimensional than they were last year. That's for sure. And I think that's where they have their edge. And I think that's always kind of been where they've had their edge, hasn't it, under Pioli, who's always been kind of defence first, and then has kind of relied on Leao or now Giroud and Pulisic to kind of make magic up top, and getting the ball to them as quickly as possible has always been really his kind of game plan. This game kicks off a really big week for them. I think I think they kind of how serious they are as kind of title pace setters is going to be defined by this next week. Because they've got Juventus on Sunday, then they go to PSG away in the Champions League, and then they travel to Napoli the following weekend, and then I assume they will have PSG not too long at home. So a big week for them in terms of squad management, in terms of kind of morale. They suffer a big loss at the hands of any of these sides, then it will be a knock for them, and especially given that they go into this game without a number of their key players. Their last game was against Genoa, where Olivier Giroud produced.
Will he be back in goal?
Maybe he will. Maybe he will. Get
great.
Okafor up top and get Giroud back in goal, because Maignan is banned for that red card, of course. Theo Hernandez picked up a yellow in that game that has also seen him banned for this game, for the Juventus game, that is. So likelihood is we'll see Florenzi at left back and Sportiello in goal. Loftus-Cheek is also out injured. So yeah, they kind of need to they need that front line to really bang. Pulisic, Giroud and Leao, as far as I'm aware, are available to play. They all have at least 5 goal involvements each this season. I think Leao has 4 goals and 3 assists, or is that Giroud? Yeah, they're all firing this term. So I think that's what that might be the difference in this big game, because Juventus are without Vlahovic and Chiesa. They're both out injured, and they've contributed directly to 9 of the 14 goals that Juve have scored in the league this season. Defensively, they've been very good. I think they've got the joint best. No, sorry, not the joint best defence in the league. I think Inter are the only side to have conceded fewer than them. I think they've kept clean sheets in 5 of their 8 games. So defensively, this Juve team have kind of reverted to type in that sense. However, they're without Danilo. They're also without Alexandro, who is, who has kind of actually performed quite well as a left-sided centre-back in that back 3. So both their left-sided centre-backs are not available. I think they could be really vulnerable, and I think that's kind of what it's come down to. Milan have their forward line at full fitness. Juve don't, and their defence is a little bit leaky. Well, could be a bit leaky as well. Not to say that Milan's won't be, but I just don't think Juventus have the firepower up top to match Milan. So I think it will be 1-0 Milan. I think it'll be 1-0 Milan.
Really?
Yeah.
Fair. I thought you were going to go bigger than that.
No.
Henry?
3-1 Milan.
3-1. I might go for a shock 1-1. A shock 1-1.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what I think. Right, let's move on to Barcelona versus Athletic Club. Sunday, 8 p.m. 3rd versus 5th. There are 4 points between them. Now, Barcelona are unbeaten in 11 games this season. 8 wins and 3 draws. They've scored 27, but conceded 10 already. They've scored the same amount of goals as this time last year, but they've conceded 6 more, not helped by conceding 2 to Celta Vigo, Mallorca and Granada. So that is not particularly good on a defensive side point of view.
However, like last season, they were conceding like almost nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, true. I mean, they were on track to concede under 15 until the final few weeks of the season. But their next few weeks are also very difficult as well. They've got Athletic Club, Shakhtar, Real Madrid, then Real Sociedad. And they do have a growing injury list, which is a slight concern, guys. So Balde, Rafinha and Frenkie de Jong are out until the end of October. Yamal and Koundé till November. And Pedri and Lewandowski are also doubtful. So do take that into account when you're making your predictions. But from Athletic Club's perspective, their only defeats this season have come in the games you'd probably expect them to lose, against Real Madrid and Real Sociedad. And as usual, they've been pretty solid defensively. Only Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid have conceded fewer than their 9 league goals. Their key players, Gorka Goretza has got 4 goals. Inaki Williams has got 4 goals and 2 assists. He's also missed a number of gilt-edged opportunities. I feel like Inaki Williams is That's kind of his story. He always contributes, but he misses a lot of chances as well. But Nico as well, his brother, he's out, who is the superior Williams, if it comes down to that as well. Barcelona have won 5 of their last 7 matches between the two sides, only losing once. But there is a big injury crisis there. But I'm still going to back him. I'm still going to back him 2-1. Henry.
0-0.
Really? Wow.
No.
It's never a good game. Unless it's at Athletic Stadium where it's bouncing. When it's at the San Mims, you know.
San Memes.
San Memes. Yeah.
San Mims.
All right, 1-1. I'm going to elevate it to 1-1.
Okay, he's gone crazy.
I was tempted to go for a draw, but I think I'm with you, Dukes. I think maybe home advantage will tell in this one. Yeah, I'll go. What did you go for?
I went 2-1.
2-1. I'll go 1-0.
1-0 to Barcelona. Okay, guys, get your predictions in for those 3 games. Let us know what you guys made of the show. Go check out yesterday's team talk with all 3 of us featuring Who's the Fourth and Zach. That was a lot of good fun. And yeah, stay tuned for the rest of Football Daily's content this week. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.